All right. It's time for Connect This. I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I wanted to let you all know that I don't do group chats. It's a consequence that none of the people that I talk to will admit to other people that they talk to me. So it's not something I'm going to get caught up in. We've got Travis coming soon, one of the people who accuses me of being a green dot texter, and I think that's why he doesn't put me in any of his groups. But we've got Doug Dawson. Doug is celebrating 49 years consulting in telecom. Welcome, Doug.
Well, in fact, this is the month of that. So yes, I'm in beautiful downtown Asheville today, which is surrounded on three sides with forest fires. So that's what happens when a million trees fall down. So it's going to be an interesting month. So yes.
Wow. Well, good luck. We're going to be touching on a bunch of stuff that, as usual, you've been writing about on the Pots and Pans by CCG blog. We've got Kim coming in. Kim, it looks like you did not join Travis on his not vacation. Welcome.
Thank you. He did not invite me to his not vacation, so I'm here with you guys, and I am celebrating Doug's 49th year in the industry. Kudos, Doug. Kudos to last that long.
And Kim, are you approaching your 1 year anniversary with TAC Broadcasting?
You always have to do it to me. Yes, I've been here for 4 whole months, so close to a year. Yeah, like that's your forte is definitely math, Chris. And I'm excited to be here. Now let's move on to the next guest.
Yeah, I'll bet your coworkers think it's been a year.
They think it's been 5. They think it's been 5.
Blair Levin, excited that you could join us. Equities analyst, former head of the FCC's National Broadband Plan, all kinds of other things. Also a fellow at the Brookings Institute, if I remember correctly. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you. And it's particularly a pleasure, Doug, because usually on any panel I am on, I've been in the industry longer than anyone. So it's a real pleasure to feel like a kid. And I am grateful to you to give me. I've only been doing this stuff for 30-some years. So,
Thank you very much, Sonny. In Florida, everyone called me Sonny. That's the reason I left there. It was terrible.
We're gonna bring Travis on as soon as we see him pop into the background. Today, we're going to be covering a variety of things. We're going to talk about the White House has Starlink. Arielle Roth had a hearing to be the NTIA administrator. The Universal Service Fund had its day in court. Missouri wants its RDOF defaults back, and so do some other states, we think. AT&T's curious about Lumen, maybe. We might talk a little bit about Dig Once, and there's some other things that we'll work in as we go along. I wanted to note that we did a fun show yesterday. So I've been working on this short video documentary about Holland, Michigan. They built a municipal fiber network. They've actually had like 30 years of experience working with dark fiber and open access and partnerships and things. And they decided to go citywide with their own network. And we did a fun video about them. And we released it with a fun panel discussion. And I think Rye, working behind the scenes, will share a link if people want to check that out to go back and watch it on YouTube. But I'm excited that we did that. Travis, looks like Travis is in the house now. Welcome, Travis. How's vacation going?
Well, I'm not on vacation yet, but sorry I'm late. When you get invited for pizza, that takes precedence. Sorry, Mr. Mitchell. So. But did I miss a rant?
No, I did cheat on you though. I just came back from a lunch at the How with Lisa Gonzalez, who had been working with us for 8 years at ILSR and has moved on to greener pastures where she does not have to see me on the regular. So
nice. Congratulations.
Travis, I did a little piece about how I don't have any friends and that's why I'm not in group chats. And I wanted you to know that I've had 10 weeks of being a truck owner and not a single person has asked me to move anything. So I truly do not have friends at this point.
Yeah. 12 weeks, I think, is the bar though, Chris. So you got
okay.
You're on the home stretch.
Oh, I have some things you can move. I have some things you can move, Chris, if
It's
you want to get
electric
to
truck.
Utah.
It's going to take me a minute to get over to you, Kim.
Yeah, if he left now, he'll be there in 3 weeks. So,
Yeah, I didn't get the extended range. So
Oh.
I wanted to start off with something a little bit light. Travis, did you have something else?
I didn't know it was a serious show today. We have a celebrity, I see. Hello, Blair.
If I'm your celebrity, you're definitely on the deal.
This is a grown-up episode. Okay, here we go. I'll be on my best behavior.
So Ezra Klein has been making the rounds. Ezra is someone I hold in high esteem. I think he has good analyses. I agree largely with his problems. I've always been annoyed because he's been writing about policy for like 10 or 12 years and he's never written about broadband. But now he wants to talk about how the Biden administration didn't do anything on broadband. And I find it super annoying. So I wanted to kick off the show by complaining about it. And I just wanted to say, we spent a lot of time talking about all the things that BEAD got wrong, things that now Ezra wants to talk about. Ezra doesn't bring up the millions of homes that were connected with the other broadband programs under the Biden administration. And I wanted to say something, and you guys can all attack me. You can accuse me of being duplicitous, but it took the United States of America like 15 or 20 years to get electricity out to all the farms. I don't think it's too much to ask that it takes 7 or 8 years to get fiber out once the federal government put its mind to it. So I'm annoyed. I'm getting turfy with Ezra. So I wasn't sure if anyone had any reactions to that.
Well, I'll step in and say I'm also a big Ezra Klein fan generally. I find his critique of the BEAD program, however, rather ahistoric. That is to say, he seems to believe that the effort began in 2021 without thinking about what Congress wanted, what problems Congress did not want to have duplicated, particularly the problems of the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund auction of 2020. And a lot of the reasons why it took so long was because that auction was so bad and led to so many problems that Congress wanted to make sure that before the money was spent, those problems didn't exist, particularly the bad mapping, but there's some other things as well. So I wish he'd had a better historic perspective. I feel very bad that he didn't include me in his group chats with Derek Thompson on this topic when I could have helped him understand it better. But having said that, certainly from a political perspective, and you saw this yesterday with Arielle Roth's hearing, the Republicans have gotten away by arguing again and again and again that the Biden administration spent $42 billion and didn't connect anyone. Now, that's a factually inaccurate statement, but they keep saying it.
Yep.
Congress appropriated $42 billion. Not that much has been spent, and the delays are now all the cause. I'm sorry, the delays are now being caused by Republicans, but they're not paying the price for it. And anyway, so but Ezra's critique and his people had to go through 14 different points. There's something about that that's actually right. And let me just close by saying that one of the worst things to ever happen to me turned out to be one of the best things to ever happen to me, which was in the 1996 Act when I was chief of staff of the FCC. Congress put impossible deadlines on us, and including a deadline to do all the major rulemakings within 6 months. And I thought it was going to be impossible. And Reid said, the chair of the FCC said to me, "No, you make everybody else's life difficult." And we had a plan and we did it. And I wish that the BEAD program had been able to do everything in 6 months instead of 3 years.
Yeah, the states and territories had to hire 56 people to head different programs, and there was arguably not 56 people in the job market able to do that work. So Of course it took time. Doug, you want to jump in?
Well, the historical perspective is, and nobody's talking about this, all the other grant programs this year are spending over $15 billion on rural broadband. That's a huge number. That's a third of the BEAD program this year. That doesn't include any BEAD dollars. So they're just ignoring there was like 8 or 9 other big grant programs the last 3-4 years. And so they're just missing the picture. If you still go anywhere in rural America and you see fiber crews working, there's a lot of fiber being built.
There's a dashboard for the SLRFRF. I just want to say SLRFRF again, the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. And we were just looking through that this morning, and all like it's $1 million to charter here, Wi-Fi parks and projects here for low income people. There's all kinds of stuff that is completed. And Kim, anything you want to add?
No, I don't have anything I wanted to add, but I'm happy to be here. I was just listening to what you guys are saying because, like, I'm Doug. What is being built with this 15 billion? I guess I do have something to add, Chris, as now I'm talking. But what is being built with this 15 billion this year, and what agencies are they coming from most, like, for the majority of that money?
There's 2 billion of RDOF, and those companies are still very active. Like Conexon is still building electric co-ops out in Florida. I mean, there's a lot of construction going on. There's still about a 1.5 billion from Reconnect, old Reconnect grants that are still under process. There's about 5 billion from capital projects funds. That program is going to have a bit of a problem because Commerce just cut their staff of 12 to staff of 2. So I don't know what that means for that program, but that's been extremely successful where they just gave them, that's state grants, all those state grant programs. SLRF, ARPA, is probably in a range of 4 billion this year for all the things they were awarded. $500 million for middle mile, over $500 million for tribal.
But we're not talking about
3
anything
billion
that
for
was
tribal.
awarded.
No, half a billion this year. We're talking, yes, but they're all being built this year. $500 million for tribal this year, Chris. So yes, and a whole bunch more next year for tribal. So state grants, EACAM. I mean, these are all places, all programs that fund.
And that's what I mean. All of us have been clear about ways that we think NTIA should have sped things up. I'm just, so I don't know. I'm gonna try to write something, see if anyone would publish it, trying to talk about what we actually learned, and also that while we know it could have been done faster, the progress has been pretty significant, and frankly, all of the doom and gloom that we've forecast has mostly been missed to date. Travis, anything you want to weigh in before we switch? Kim, go ahead first.
Well, I was going to say, if everything had gone perfectly like we think it should have, what do we think the earliest time frame this money could have gotten out? I mean, I guess, Blair, I was going to go to you because I'm just curious. Do you think we're at 3 years, but do you think it could have happened in 1 if we had it all streamlined?
Well, the most significant amount of time actually had to do with the mapping.
Right.
And the tragedy there is if we had used the first map, if we just said, okay, we know our map isn't that great, but let's just start with this map. We could have saved a lot of time. Alternatively, by the way, there are in the private sector far more accurate maps. Google has one, Apple has one, I think Microsoft has one, and there are different reasons why they have them, but they're much more accurate. If the government could have been able to, shall we say, borrow them, that would have been good. So a lot of it had to do with the mapping. But I would just say that what the Republicans say is the cause of the delay are all these requirements and like DEI and certain things related to union labor and stuff like that. I'm not sure that really cost that much time. I'm not sure they were necessary. And this is where Ezra Klein has his everything bagel theory that liberals tend to throw on all kinds of requirements and they should focus on doing the job that they're supposed to do, which in this case is broadband. But
no, those weren't necessary. Those weren't necessary. They caused no delays.
Yeah, I don't think they caused delay. And what you see in the bidding is they didn't cause costs to go up that much either. But look, the Capital Projects Fund, $10 billion, it's all out. And it's the program is different. One of the challenges for BEAD that people forget is that the actual the goal was to connect everybody. And I'll just say, if all your goal is to move the ball down the field, pick up 20 yards, lots of different ways to do that. The difficulty of getting it over the end zone, 100%, you've just increased massively the problem. But sure, there were lots of ways to speed it up. I don't think a year would have been realistic, but I think you could have gotten it done within a couple.
Yeah. All right, Travis, let me throw the next one to you. I don't know if you saw the story ahead of time, but The Verge, great coverage of this bizarre claim that they have brought Starlink to the White House complex in order to improve Wi-Fi access. you're a technical guy. Can you explain to me how this is happening?
No, I think, but this is common for ISPs. People misinterpret Wi-Fi versus the ISP. You know, it's kind of a naming issue. I really have no idea what's going on there.
Neither do they.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, I don't think the Verge has any kind of insight either as to what's actually happening.
Oh, I think they do. I mean, I think Nilay Patel is one of the best people covering tech issues, and you can certainly disagree with me. But to me, this looks like it was a press release. The White House is trying to help out Elon Musk wherever it can, and they made up some stuff. And this isn't like a statement where the press secretary was like had to freelance on the spot. This was an email. Presumably could have had some technical expertise to explain what exactly they were doing, but I think to me, it's yet another sense that it is totally amateur hour in over there on this stuff, and drives me a little bit crazy.
I guess the question would be how does this help Starlink?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, that's a real question. I mean, the White House has to be on fiber, so I mean, how would Starlink possibly help them? So
yeah. So there was a story a week or two ago about someone getting in trouble as the Secret Service going on the roof looking for places to put a Starlink terminal, and then now they've said they put the terminals a few in a different building further away, and they are using that to improve the Wi-Fi, which is nonsensical. But Travis, I think, is trying to get Starlink in the news and get a good publicity and make people take it more seriously. I don't think they actually really have a plan that like you would say is a good plan, but I don't think there's any other way to explain it. It's ludicrous.
I don't know. Okay, so again, I don't have a lot of interaction with government, but the government interaction that I do have tends to be very difficult to get things done. So they will ask us to do them favors because their own internal process is so slow that I don't know, maybe there was a dead spot that they were trying to do for something because, you know, they've got all this new media people in there now. So I have no idea, but they're obviously trying to solve a problem that they couldn't seem to solve through the bureaucracy of the internal network.
And that's possible.
I mean, when Trump went on the White House lawn to sell Teslas, when the Secretary of Commerce touts the Tesla stock, what problem are they trying to solve? It's not a public problem, right?
Well, I mean, as far as, yeah, I mean, they're not selling the product. I mean, it's just interested. I mean, you could say that same argument about burning dealerships down. You know, is that doing any good? You know,
I'll take a courageous stand to say no.
Okay, good. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I'll take a courageous stand and second that.
Yeah, the problem I have with all of this is you don't really know. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I could theorize, but it's just theorizing. You know, I have no idea why they would need Starlink in the White House. I really don't.
Travis, at any point, have you gotten the sense that I know what's going on?
Yeah, well, no, I get a kick out of some of these reporters. Unless they have inside information and they've seen it and they understand the use case, I guess I just kind of disregard it as political theater. But
yeah, I would just say that I feel like Nilay Patel, when it comes to intellectual property discussions and some of these issues around internet access, I think he's proven that he's not only sharp but entertaining to listen to because he brings more background knowledge than a lot of people who know the technology. Anything else on this?
No, I'd be curious though to find the answer. I have no idea. You know,
it would shock me if every desk in the White House is not wired with at least Cat 6, but probably direct fiber optics.
Probably, but you don't know what kind of access controls. You know, are they trying? Are these new media personalities trying to get to their platforms to publish articles based on what they learned in the press room, and they can't through the White? I have no idea.
No, I think you're entirely right. Although that raises many more concerning questions because introducing unsecured telecommunications into the White House is a deeply problematic thing to be doing, which is what appears to be happening.
But it isn't if it's all separate.
Okay.
That would be like saying introducing T-Mobile cellular into the White House is a problem. Well, it is there. You know, it's
Yes, no, and I think we have a sense of, from the news stories recently, what a deep problem it is in terms of the the way in which secure and unsecure networks are being commingled. In fact, I would highly recommend, I think David French, who is a JAG officer, has spoken about the issues around this and what he saw as a military officer and what would get people court-martialed if they had done in terms of some of the things that we've seen recently. So if people want to go down that corridor, they can. But from a telecommunications point of view, it'd be interesting to talk about what security there is on Starlink, but I don't think anyone's suggested that it is very robust, especially when dealing against government actors that have millions of dollars to be trying to break it. Arielle Roth, in the preparatory notes. So Arielle Roth is going to be the NTIA administrator. I don't think anyone thinks that she won't be confirmed. I think it's very likely she'll be confirmed. Lovely kids. I watched enough of it to see her kids in the background, and super cute. So I'll admit, I wrote, I'm not a theater guy. I don't like political theater. And I watched a little bit of it. I could not get through Senator Cruz's questions. I just started throwing things around my room and I gave up. So I didn't see it. I just got texts from people who didn't like it. And I don't know. I think we'll go to Blair first, but I don't know, Blair, if you want to share any brief thoughts, and then we can go around a little bit for anyone that did watch them.
Yeah. So I'll do very quick thoughts. Number one, you have to remember what her job is. Her job is to be confirmed. And the way you get confirmed is you say very uncontroversial things, and any difficult question, you just say, well, I have to talk to people. And she constantly said, I'm not confirmed yet, which is kind of odd, because after you're confirmed, then then what's the point of a confirmation hearing if you can't answer these questions? But let's put that aside. Let us also put aside that if you had the word expeditious on your hearing bingo drinking card, you're probably suffering still a tremendous hangover. It was a word she uttered quite often. The more serious point is there were two questions that from an investor perspective were the most important, and they turned out to be the most important questions, particularly for the Democratic senators. Question number one, are you going to make the 42 states that are either done or are near done with their bidding process redo everything? And she wouldn't answer that, suggesting that that's on the table. And I think that's very problematic for a lot of folks. The second is, are you going to adopt a high cost threshold that's going to move money from fiber to satellite?
Blair, can I jump in for a second on that? So this is something that I've praised in the past. And one of the things that drove me nuts about Senator Cruz's comments is that he suggested that low Earth orbit was not on the table in the existing Biden BEAD process, when it is. And all of us have said that low Earth orbit satellite should be a solution for many homes where it is cost prohibitive. So it is on the menu already.
That's right.
And there were suggestions that it wasn't. But then every state gets to choose the area at which the cost to connecting a home is so great that alternative technologies could be included. And so that's what you're discussing right now in terms of that threshold.
And the question is whether you switch the authority from the states to determine that threshold to the federal government.
Yes, which I would totally oppose. But and not only that, but it would, as you said, it would introduce delays, significant costs. Kim feels so strongly about this, she's actually weeping now. She actually told us she'd have to disappear for a minute, so she'll be back in a second. Doug, did you want to jump in?
I'm trying not to weep. So, yeah. I believe those two issues are very squarely on the table, and I fully believe NTIA is going to dictate a new cost threshold. So that's, I just reading the tea leaves. That's not what any of us in the industry want. That's not what a lot of politicians want. But I think that when you look at all the other things that are happening to all other funding programs, I think they're going to give the money where they want to give the money. So,
what's the cost threshold at which you significantly change the current, what's happening in all the states that are doing the bidding? If you had the high cost threshold at $20,000, I don't think it changes much. Even at $10,000, I'm not sure it changes that much. You really have to go much lower, but I'm not sure you save that much money. Am I right? Do you know the numbers?
Oh yeah. No, if they take it to $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000, it drastically changes the numbers, and it does save a lot of money because the money
Does it
doesn't
drastically, Doug?
allocate.
And you're
Yes.
your numbers guy. When I looked at some of Blair's research, it wasn't in all the states, but I was shocked how many states, more than half of the awards appear to be less than $3,000.
Yeah. But they're not really going to, you have to be real careful about that number they're talking about. So that, they're not really at $3,000 because you can't build fiber for that in an urban
Well,
rural
that's
area. Yes.
Sorry, the $3,000 is the federal subsidy, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So it's, first of all, are they going to set the threshold on total cost because they keep touting that place in Nevada that was $70,000? Are they going to talk about the amount that this comes from the funds? I don't know. We're going to find out. She's going to be in here in a couple of weeks, I assume, Blair. How long does it take from hearing to being seated?
Well, she's got to go through the process of answering questions by April 4th, and then usually there's a week or two. But yeah, basically, I would think there'd be a vote to confirm her by mid-April, no later than the end of April.
And I have to imagine she marches in with her ideas. She's been working on it for months. So
I am not sure about that, and the reason I'm not sure about that is I think there were a lot of statements made by Trump himself, by Musk, by Brendan Carr, by others, all assuming that the states were basically still on their own 20-yard line. You now have so many states so down the field that it's actually it's a little bit embarrassing to say, boy, Biden sure screwed this up by delaying things. Now let's do all this rebidding just for the sake of helping our largest campaign contributor, that's a sub message, and delay everything 6 months to a year. I think it's a little more complicated, particularly because you have a lot of Republican governors who are going to kind of be pissed off. They may not be public about it, but I think it's more problematic than they were indicating earlier on. And the delays to date make it worse.
Ruben asks about the subsidy. We're talking about per location for this, for the purposes of this. And my heart says what Blair is saying, which is that it would be crazy to commit to an extra 6 months to 12 months before you get the money out the door, only to make fairly modest changes against a political backlash of many people in the mostly the Republican Party. Hardly any Democrats represent areas that are getting BEAD subsidies. And yet my head, as Doug said, fits with him, which is that this is what we're seeing in a lot of other programs where things are being cut based on a superficial understanding of things rather than an actual plan that is rigorous and fits with the facts. So that's where I end up on it.
I mean, Treasury just announced a couple of days ago that if people don't have their ARPA money completely straight by next Monday, they're taking anything that's not documented well back. I mean, they're just grabbing money back from states. And that doesn't, so things had to be allocated, but if the paperwork wasn't straight, they're going to take it back anyway. And they were very clear about that. I think it was a grab to take money, to not allocate money to grants. So I'm just not hopeful. I hope that you're all right, and I hope Blair's completely right. But I'm not willing to make any bets on it.
As an analyst, I'm saying I think the problem was more difficult than they were thinking. Having said that,
yes.
What I've written is the Democrats were clearly trying to get her to take certain things off the table. She didn't take them off the table. They're on the table for a reason.
Yes.
So that is the way I think.
Because she could have taken them off the table very easily if she was going to. Yeah.
Let's move from the table to the countertop. Kim, what's up?
I was going to say, is anybody surprised by any of this that's happening? No. Come on. We knew that if she gets confirmed, things were going to change. I think everybody just assumed that they might. But we know all indications are saying that she's going to make some big changes in this program.
I still think there's a chance that they just make superficial changes, getting rid of labor, environmental, and similar requirements, and then they tell everyone they changed anything, and they don't. I think that's still a viable potential.
But if they do that, they still have to regrade the grants because a lot of states have 30 and 40% of the grants going to labor issues, and they have to at least regrade them, and that means they have to give the ISPs a chance to revise their grant application. At a minimum, the very fastest state's going to be Louisiana. Whatever they tell them to do, they're going to do it in 2 weeks, right? So, I mean, they will still have their new one all done, and they'll get all the ISPs in the room. They'll all agree together how they're going to revise the grants. But everyone else, it's not going to be a year delay, but it could easily be 3, 4, 5 months because they, I mean, even slow old California finally opened their BEAD portal. I mean, everybody's moving down the field here. So, yeah.
All right. Any last comments?
So when do we expect the first BEAD user to be?
Well, it's so I'm curious if NIST had gone through the standard box checking exercise rather than being held up for political reasons. I wonder if Louisiana would have had the first person connected. At this point, I think
they wouldn't have one connected, but there would be construction crews out staking out roads. I mean, there would have been work happening. Yes.
Yeah, Louisiana's been sitting there for more than a month now, just wondering when they're going to get their money because the Trump administration has refused to release it.
So,
well, the good news is NIST laid off 90 people and they only got like 200. So that I don't know how they're ever going to approve these.
So Travis, it could be a while still.
Okay. Well,
Hey, can we get a little clock on this show that just says the countdown of when the first BEAD customer? Yeah.
Here's something I'll say.
That's our version of that's the reverse of the doomsday clock. It's the BEAD clock. Yeah.
I'm a deadbeat when it comes to the clothes I've promised y'all. Will you get your hoodies before BEAD connects someone? That is the question.
No. A solid no. BEAD is going to win over Chris's hoodie purchase.
Okay.
Blair, by the way, that includes you in the hoodies now, Blair, because you were
absolutely. And I want to get Blair one of these. This is from the most recent Tribal Broadband Bootcamp. And
show us the back. Show us the back.
All right. Oh, very nice.
Very nice. Yes.
Yeah. So when Matt Rantanen designed them, he said he wasn't sure I would like it because I don't know, it's cool looking, and so he thought I would have just not like it. But I'm loving it.
Well, it doesn't have plaid on it, so I get where Matt was coming from. There was missing a lack of plaid.
I'm also roasting today, so just for the sake of looking good, I'm sitting here on fire. USF, Universal Service Fund. Everyone's talking about the hearing at SCOTUS, the oral arguments. I want to spend 10 seconds on that, and I want to move on to what I think is more interesting, which had not hit me until I read Blair's analysis of it. And so, Blair, what's the 10-second version of what we learned from SCOTUS? But then let's really jump into a world in which we have low Earth orbit satellite available, and what USF might look like in 5 years.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court heard arguments that a conservative think tank, our public interest group, had challenged the Universal Service framework. The Fifth Circuit panel upheld the constitutionality of the framework. The entire Fifth Circuit, on a 9-7 vote, overturned it, saying it was unconstitutional. The Sixth and 11th Circuit, also conservative circuits, upheld it. So you go into court, you're pretty sure where the 3 Democrats will be. They'll go to uphold it. But this is kind of an interesting case in the sense that this is not an agency versus the industry. Industry was on the side of the agency. So I think my view and the prevailing view is that the Supreme Court, for a lot of different reasons, there may not be a majority opinion, but in terms of the logic and the precedent, but a majority of the justices are likely to uphold it. What that means is that the fire is not being lit under Congress, but everyone recognizes that universal service needs to be reformed. And now we get to the thing that I think you found was more interesting about my analysis.
Yes. So in a world where Starlink is more or less available to most of the homes that are currently receiving subsidies from the federal government for a local ISP, usually a cooperative or some small family-owned company that I am strongly in favor of existing. Many of those would be very difficult for their numbers to work if they were not receiving federal subsidies. But there's a question of why the federal government would continue to subsidize a service if there is an alternative available with no direct subsidy from the Universal Service Program via low Earth orbit. So
Yeah,
what happens?
just very quickly, and I look forward to the other folks talking about this. What I was talking about is presumably in September and October, Congress starts to seriously look at what is the future of universal service. In a world in which Trump, Musk, Secretary Ludnick, and Roth are all saying, mission accomplished. We took that horrible BEAD program. None of the money got out. We're getting all the money out. It'll be done. Everyone's going to be connected. Because when they think about the digital divide, they're only thinking about the access divide. Those of us in the industry also think about the affordability divide, about the institutional divide, about the training divides. But that is not on their minds. And so what happens to the discussion in Congress if the leadership of the Republican Party is basically saying that the digital divide no longer exists?
Well, I certainly think, well, good, Kim.
No, I'm not going first.
All right, Doug.
You go, Doug.
Go ahead, Nancy, teddy bear guy.
I think some of the money that's been allocated, for example, there is a huge amount of RDOF money still outstanding, and a lot of those for projects that haven't turned one shovel yet. And I think that those are at risk of having their money withdrawn because they're saying, hey, that's not needed. Satellite can take care of those. And so, to use Connexon as a good example, they're building, I don't know, 40 or 60, some giant number of electric co-ops, and they're just marching through the states. But about half of those have not even started. They could very well lose that funding. I don't want to scare anybody by saying that, but they seem to be grabbing back unexpended and money of projects that haven't started. So there's a lot of that money is at risk. If by now, I mean, it's been 2020 since they made the RDOF awards. If you haven't spent it by now, there's actually a reasonable argument to go take the damn money back.
Well, in 2025, I think, depending on when you got the funds, right now you should be on that 40 to 50% coverage rate. I think you would have already passed the mile marker where you had to have started the project.
No, that's by state. You measure by state. So if Connexon's building 12 co-ops in Florida, they only have to have 4 of them done. So that's the way it's really working. So yes.
Okay, thank you for making me look like a fool, Doug. You're out.
Well, I didn't make you look like a fool. I mean, we haven't even talked about your hair yet today.
Hey, I got my hair cut yesterday. This is how it's supposed to look, I'm told. Kim, were you going to say something?
I'm just thinking about this, but the ramifications of all of this go really deep and could get very spicy because I think everybody's looking at it from a straight on point of view, but it could get really nasty if Starlink comes in and saying we can service all these areas, right? What is the fallout of this?
Yeah.
And do we really know?
So this is where I'm curious about Travis's point of view, because for all I know, Travis probably has read far more about this than I have. But I've been digging in a little bit lately to the rocketry blogs and what they're saying about Starship. And they seem to be largely of the opinion that Starship is not going to work. And that there are many more problems with the SpaceX approach than I had been aware of. And if to the extent that continues and they're not able to overcome them, it puts Starlink at risk of not being able to have enough satellites up in the sky, certainly not its heavier next generation ones. And there's interesting cascading failure options that I had not considered regarding, I sort of assumed LEO, we'd keep seeing more launches, we'd see an improvement of more LEO options. We could very well see LEO's prospects dim over the next 2 or 3 years. And at that point, what the universal service structure looks like has to change yet again, potentially.
Well,
Travis, let me go to Travis first. So on this specific issue, Travis, have you looked into the rocketry type stuff around SpaceX?
Yeah, and I think they're having really good success with the heavy boosters. They're having issues right now with the what do they call them? The dragons and the non-oxygen dragons, and I think they've even got that now resolved. No, it'll work. They'll get it to work. I don't. I mean, look at the guy's track record.
You want to make a bet?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I can't win every bet though. So what side should I take?
So what is an appropriate? When do you think? And I would say limit yourself to 12 months, just so we don't all die of old age. But when do you think they'll have a successful launch of Starship?
Before the first BEAD customers hooked up.
Oh, that's bold. Okay. Okay. I'll take those. I'll take that. Yeah.
I gotta let you in something. No, I think they're gonna. My reading lately is I think they finally figured out the issue they've had with the last two. So the next one that's coming up in 2 weeks, I believe, I think we'll have good success.
So you wanna do a chicken wing bet that the next Starship launch could be delayed by weather. Let's say 6 weeks. Starship will have a successful launch of Starship within 6 weeks.
I think we're going to have a good,
Okay.
It's part of the iterative process, but I think we're
getting into orbit and recovery, landing on its own.
The heavy booster will land on its own. The ship will land in the ocean as designed.
Okay.
Yeah. So hold on. I've won 5 chicken wing bets, so this will be 6 now. Okay. All right.
And how many of these have you collected?
0. He's always gone. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm willing to make more and more bets.
Well, no, it's important because that's the platform that will launch the next iteration of Starlink, which will give the next, big speed bump and capacity bump.
The stuff that I've read,
and Bezos is relying on that too, So I mean, if he's
I'm
the only ones, So
I'm curious. I've come around to believing that that these problems are not going to be worked out, and I would have been willing to say that within 6 months we still won't see a successful launch and return, and certainly not a reusable craft within that time frame, which I think significantly changes their cost of putting things in orbit, which then changes the economics of a lot of these things. So, Doug, you were going to say something before I went down that tangent.
Oh, I've been wondering. I mean, I've been reading a lot of folks wondering about the economics of it, even if it does work. They only last 5 years, and it's still very expensive to launch them, no matter how many of them you stick on one of the big ships. And it's just, is that really a sustainable market? Because once you got your revenue stream, are you putting it all back into always launching satellites? The math doesn't look that great on it. So
that's what that's what I'm looking at. So we're changing this USF whole structure based on a technology that I don't know if we really understand if it's going to be sustainable long term. How are we making business decisions based on this?
Well, sustainable enough to support all these rural people is the question.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this is where I think Blair's experience in the 90s, having to make business decisions about the internet thing that was just to come out. You've had to wrestle with the frontiers. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that it is always difficult for every corporation buying technology to decide, do we buy the technology today or do we wait for 2 years because it's going to be better? So every corporation, whether it be buying laptops or whatever, this is a very common problem. And the question is the government going to make a huge bet on a particular technology? But that's not what I really see going on here. Because the truth is, we're going to get a wire. We have the capacity to get a wireline connection to nearly every American location, home and business. And we know that technology will last many, many years, and whatever demands AI or whatever put on the networks, they're going to be able to do it. Rather, there is a political decision that involves 2 things, one of which is, do we want to pay less in the short term, but potentially more in the long term? And that's a political decision. There's certainly economics and policy behind it. And the second is, what is the nature of the relationship between Trump and Musk on this issue? And in that sense, is it simply a personal political decision? It is astonishing to me the extent to which the entirety of the federal government, whether it be the Secretary of Commerce touting the stock, or the president selling cars on the lawn, or the Attorney General saying, we're disbanding the white collar crime unit. So white collar criminals, y'all come in. But at the same time, and by the way, we're the party that now believes totally in freedom of speech, unless you're in certain protests on the Columbia campus, or you're protesting an industry, a company we like. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I would like to know what they think are the critical metrics for making that decision. Haven't heard a word about that. Certainly didn't hear a word about that at the hearing yesterday.
As we're, I had one last question that I wanted to ask, and everyone can take a shot at it. Is there a reason to continue these hearings? The Senate decision-making infuriates me, where one president gets his nominees no matter how unqualified, and the other, many of them barely get a hearing and are treated as though they are untouchable. The hearings that we do have, at this point, people openly lie, provably within a few days, and there's no penalty for it. I'm not convinced that this constitutionally demanded approach is worth continuing. So, Kim, any thoughts? And we're not going to go long on this, but just shortly, like, what do you think about these confirmation processes?
I mean, my point is that you have to play the game better. But I think they should continue. And I think that the Dems have not been as great at playing the games as the Republicans have. If we like them or if we don't, it's part of who we are today. And I think you have to learn to adapt to it personally.
Kim slaps me with reality. Doug?
I'm completely agreeing with Kim. She's absolutely right. It's political theater. You just got to go with it. So,
Travis?
Yeah.
Is this a technology show or are we in civics?
It is.
Okay.
So it's a really good question, Travis. This stuff has deep implications for technology. I'm not just doing it because I like it. I hate this stuff.
Okay, now are you doing your stand-up comedy tonight too? I mean, you love this stuff.
No, I am caught in this wave, imprisoned by it. Blair?
No, we have to continue. We have no choice.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it about the way I feel about, or it's informed by the president firing the 2 FTC Democrats. Whatever you believe about his legal ability to do that in the upcoming case examining a 1935 Supreme Court precedent, I benefited enormously both times I was at the commission by having powerful people, the Republican commissioners, question me about what we were doing. We made some mistakes. We would have made more mistakes if they hadn't been in that process. I think confirmation hearings, even though they're theater, nonetheless, they provide some vehicle for raising issues, forcing people to confront contradictions and things like that. But, oh my God, it should be so much better. And I would simply say, I look back on the 90s when there were hearings leading up to the 96 Act. They were so much better than the hearings are today. People actually learned things. They asked questions not to get a 30-second clip on YouTube or Fox News, but because they were sincerely interested. And if we do X, what then happens?
Yeah. I was deeply influenced by a George Will column. I haven't listened to a lot of things that man says. I disagree with most everything, but he'd made a point more than 20 years ago at this point, I think, that we don't have a king. We're not electing a king. Congress needs to do things. And I guess I would wrap this up by just saying we will all benefit if Congress takes more responsibility and pride in their work to actually do the job rather than just engaging in ludicrous theater. We could have good theater. The next thing on the agenda is RDOF defaults, and we can go through this quick, but the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, there's a ton of defaults, like a third. I think our dashboard suggests a third of the projects that defaulted. Some states got hit harder than others. Minnesota hit real hard. Missouri hit real hard. We're starting to see Missouri and Minnesota. I think Angie Craig is leading an effort here saying, hey, we want some of that money from the RDOF defaults. And we wanted to go to some of these projects where we were unfairly harmed by this process. So, Kim, I'm just curious, you know that you are in construction now, and but you're on the FBA.
We call me Construction Kim.
Construction Kim. Con Kim.
Con Kim.
You work with the FBA and the local officials and things like that. What is your thought on any of this? Is this something hoping that we'd see an earmark for some of these funds returning to states? Is there any hope there? Or do you think it's a reasonable request?
No. No. I don't know if I have anything else, but no, I don't. I don't think so. Kim construction. See, Ruben's coming in hot.
Yeah, it
Ruben's
was sitting right
coming in
there.
hot.
Yes.
Ruben's had a ton of great comments. I'm sorry I haven't been clicking him up, but Ruben's crushing it today.
Yeah, he has. No, I just don't have any. I don't have any hope.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. Doug?
No chance, because that would mean giving out new allocations. Remember, most of
Yeah.
that third at default, it got put into RDOF. So it, we're only talking the more recent stuff that didn't make it in there. And Missouri and Minnesota were along with Illinois and one or two others, were the hardest hit of that. So it's not a lot of states, but there's no way they're going to write them a check. It's never going to happen.
Blair, can I ask you the dumb and dumber question of, is there a 1 in a million chance that this could happen?
Yes, there is a 1 in a million chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance, but I agree with the others. It's not the way I would bet. The race is not always to the swift or the strong. That is the way to bet. And in this case, they're neither fat, swift, nor strong.
Are we crushing Chris's dreams today? Because I don't feel like anybody's giving Chris any hope right today at all.
Well, the next thing is actually, I'm a quantum fiber customer from Lumen, and AT&T might be looking to purchase them. So it's a real hard show for me today, people. Travis, you compete against quantum in the sense that LeBron James could compete against a middle school basketball player. Are you have any concerns about suddenly going head to head with AT&T in your market?
No, I mean, I think I've seen, and maybe Doug has seen some of this too, some of the big companies, when they can bundle cell and home internet and various other services together, it does give them an advantage, a marketing advantage. So I don't know. The jury's out on this one, Mr. Mitchell.
Interestingly, AT&T does not bundle their home broadband and their internet very much. They kind of talk about it when you go to the store, but you don't get it on one bill and you don't get a discount for it. So they are not good at that. They are way better at marketing after they build than Lumen is. I mean, they flood the market with door knockers for a year. And so they're, and they're going to invest money in more neighborhoods in your markets than Lumen was. Lumen ran out of money. So they're going to build a whole lot more fiber in those markets. So
okay, can you tell me what's the difference between Lumen and Quantum versus AT&T, and why you have hate between the two, Christopher Mitchell?
Yeah, that's
I
a good
just don't want to be
question.
an AT&T customer. I think Quantum's been pretty nice. I've heard of horror stories about AT&T. Their customer service, I think, is worse. I could be wrong. I'm hopefully by the time this all closes and they get around to changing the logos, I have a certain local Minneapolis-based option in my house. But I don't know. If I win too many bets suddenly, maybe I'll be blacklisted.
If you win your first bet, come on, let's keep it together.
Blair, what are your thoughts on the rumors that have been going around? And have you been spreading any?
I haven't, but my colleague, Jonathan Chaplin, has written extensively on that. And so anything I say reflects my understanding of the situation from him. What I think is important for listeners to understand is there's a wonderful debate going on on Wall Street about what the path forward is for cable companies, cellular companies, and the traditional fixed wireline companies that were not cable, which is to say the telcos. You see this most in a debate about whether T-Mobile should buy Charter or whether Comcast should buy Charter. In other words, should a wireless company seek to have more fixed wireline assets because you lower your cost structure? Or should cable just seek to get greater scale by expanding to essentially a national provider, which the wireless guys are? So there's a lot of questions about different ways in which companies can utilize capital, financial capital, to improve their cost structure, their revenues, margins, opportunities. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I listen to Jonathan. I obviously think he's right, but there are very smart people in the market who argue exactly the opposite. But what you see with AT&T is the effort to, in a kind of complicated financial way, increase the fiber footprint for the sake both of those revenues, but also for the sake of the wireless revenues and the wireless margins. And that's what's going on. And there are a variety of other things that are going to affect it, Lumen's a big target out there. Charter is an interesting target. Cox Cable is an interesting target. But there's also a bunch of smaller companies. And one of the things that the FCC is going to do is allow companies to retire their copper plant more easily, which makes those companies which have some fiber, some copper, more attractive in this particular battle because the cost of retiring copper goes down. So this is part of a larger issue that Wall Street is debating right now, and the companies are having that debate internally.
A quick question from the audience there for you, Blair.
Yeah, why does T-Mobile not bid for Lumen? What I would say is stay tuned. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know anything about that. But look, in the same way that you have Verizon buying Frontier, and there was a lot of controversy about that, you have T-Mobile looking at various fiber assets. The bidding, shall we say, is not yet done on Lumen. But I think that later on in this decade, you're going to see a lot of different kinds of consolidation as people try to figure, there'll just be a big fiber roll up, and people try to figure out how to, at a time when, look, we're hitting pretty much all the customers that can be hit. So how do you improve your financial picture by improving your cost structure?
Doug?
Yeah, that's what it boils down to. So, I mean, we'll be back to 3 or 4 big national players by a decade from now. I mean, they're just going to keep consolidating. I mean, there was rumors of Comcast looking at Charter, and I mean, it just never ends. Big guys looking at big guys, and a few more of those roll ups, and there's nobody left. And so, I mean, that's people. AT&T is going to end up as the big national phone company for the fiber market. They'll just buy it all. So, now, the one thing about AT&T to keep in mind is since they merged with Bell South, they've made nothing but disastrous investments since then. They are the king of disastrous investments. DirecTV, wonderful thing to buy.
But since they got out of media,
Time Warner Media, very good buy. Yeah,
no, but I think they have done a lot better.
It cost them $45 billion to get out of those two things.
Right, but and I'm not defending that by any stretch, but also since they stopped buying those things, they're doing much better.
Yes,
Ruben,
if they just build and operate, they're actually not a bad company. Yes.
Ruben asked, I wonder why the cable companies don't use their growing fiber footprints to feed 5G small cell, and I would say they do. I think it was 2018, 2019. There was a crew building fiber in Seward, Travis, outside my office, and I was talking with them, and they were under construction for Comcast, but they were building T-Mobile fiber. And so I assume that Comcast was extending fiber on T-Mobile's dime, basically, in that case, overlashing to where they already had pole position.
Yeah, they have not actually done very much of their own infrastructure. They were going to, and they slowed way down on the cellular infrastructure. So they're still mostly riding the big guys. They're relying on their Wi-Fi for the upload, and so that they're happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. They're relying on what they consider to be a great deal, an MVNO deal with Verizon, as well as some additional wireless in the CBRS band where they have a lot of capacity. But this goes exactly what Doug was saying about, it's all about, is there a better way to lower your cost structure, which gives you an advantage over your competitors and gives you an advantage when talking to Wall Street.
Anything else you want to add, Travis?
No, well done, all. I like it. We'll see. But I think we've seen this episode before. The pagers, the cable companies, the cell phone networks. I mean, this episode is, I think this is the 4th or 5th chapter, right?
When you say the episode, you mean we have a bunch of companies and then they roll up until.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other big merger right now is Zayo buying all the Crown Castle stuff. I mean, that's just that leaves Lumen and Zayo as really the only 2 players of any magnitude. So that's a massive roll up. So, yeah.
What do you think? This question with Zayo and Lumen being the 2 backhaul providers, right, in the country, or like some of them, do you think that we're going to see them raise their prices, and then the cost of internet that will end up at the home will be higher, Doug, because of some of these roll ups? even
I
from
would
that
make any,
aspect?
I wouldn't make any bet that the standalone Lumen backhaul company has very much life left in the meter. Someone will roll them up too. So, no, I mean, technology has made bandwidth cheaper and cheaper, and there's no reason that that will stop. I mean, we're in the process now of upgrading the whole national network to 400 gigabit lasers, and they're already talking about terabit lasers. And every time they make those upgrades, it's going to get cheaper. So I'm not too worried about that. So,
well, let's not forget the wizard once said, $100 internet is coming to a home near you. You're not wrong, Doug.
Yep.
No, we've seen it in a bunch of places.
Mm-hmm.
So, last topic, Doug had wrote about Dig Once, collected into a post a bunch of things around the challenges of how you can't half-ass dig once, I guess I would say. And while it might be better to chuck conduit in a trench without a plan, there's a pretty big might there. So, Doug, you want to recap that post at all?
Well, I wrote that because there are cities who've done exactly that. They just chuck fiber conduit in the thing and go, well, you know, that's there, and they try to make people use it. And because it doesn't have any good access points, nobody's interested. They can't give it away for any price. And so if you do it right, you know, any given city or county over a 20 or 30-year period rebuilds a substantial amount of their roads. Eventually, you end up with a really good secondary wholesale market that benefits all the small guys. That's how the small guys compete with the big guys. I mean, if Travis could get all sorts of conduit that's already there to pull his stuff through, that would be a huge benefit. But they got to do it right. Without access points, it's worthless. So.
Well, and it's a matter of doing it right to what spec. I think in that case, Travis wouldn't just want it right to a spec; he would want it to his spec. I'm guessing.
Well, they wouldn't build it to every home, so it's not going to be his last mile stuff.
No, but he wants the vaults in the middle of the neighborhood. I mean, in the middle of the block.
It would get him.
Let's keep talking about him without him being able to jump in.
It would get him from neighborhood to neighborhood much faster if it was there. So, yes.
Well, I think, Travis, you've considered this. At least I've brought it up for you. If for instance, a city was to build in a low income neighborhood to your spec, if you would use it. And what I recall is that you hadn't ruled it out. I don't know. You were enthusiastic about it.
No, I think the biggest thing is if you could utilize somebody else's fiber to do backbone, that's far more valuable than distribution. And the more rural you get as an operator, the more valuable it becomes. Because as Doug just alluded to, you know, with 400 gig DWDM, you know, channels, you can get a lot of bandwidth, but that most rural operators don't have access to that. They have to buy lit service from whoever's there. And, you know, just like the stuff, you know, you and I were talking about one time, Chris, it just gets to be so cost, you know, just the terrible amount of cost, which really blows your financial model. So I would choose backbone over distribution.
And that's what we're talking about. I agree. It's backbone.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So the question that I had was, Doug, how to do it correctly. And I will say that, answering my own question, we've often highlighted the work that has been done in Dakota County in Minnesota, actually by someone who watches this show, someone who has been pretty influential. David, I hope you're having a good day out there. But among other things, great coordination years in advance before they open up trenches to give others a chance to get in the trench. And then putting in excess capacity and making available on multiple levels. If you want dark fiber, I think there's ways to get access to that. If you want conduit, there might be access to that. It might vary depending on where it is, but they create multiple options, and there's a lot of communication ahead of time.
Well, and a big part of that is you have to make the road crews have to be willing to work with fiber guys a lot. If they're not given any extra money to do that, they're like, I'm not pausing 10 minutes for those guys. So, yeah.
I don't know, Chris, my experience has been a little different. The fiber network's there, but the political drive to get it, the ability to utilize it is almost insurmountable for most of these counties and cities.
Yeah, that's a great point, Travis. I've seen this in a number of places where you have a great engineer that has done the right work, engineered the network correctly, and the people above them don't see the value, don't know how to take advantage of it, and they miss out on economic development opportunities, on competition and other things. Kim?
Well, I think, isn't that the point, that the smaller guys or the local ISPs or regional ISPs are the ones who would use this or take advantage of it? But even the tier ones, if you gave them access to some of this, would never use it.
Pretty
So I
rarely.
don't
I mean,
think who,
never's
yeah,
wrong.
but
I
who would
think.
use it?
So I
What?
mean, like we've seen places where edge cases. So I agree with you. I would just say edge cases rather than never.
Which is fair. Yeah, that's fair. That rarely, let's put rarely, is ever used. So it's like you have these, like just Travis said, like the cities and communities, and some of these people won't use it. The big guys won't use it. So are you putting all this money in for a really good theory of how it should be done? But if it's not getting utilized, why are we doing it?
Well, there's multiple things that come to mind. One is there can actually be scarcity issues. So you may have areas of town on main corridors where the right of way is being used up, and you have just no more land. And so at that point, you really want to make sure you have some sort of multi-channel duct available to increase capacity rather than putting one last conduit in the last spot, right? Like whoever the dude was that chopped down the last tree on Easter Island. Well done. At a certain point, you have to have a plan. But I do think, like when I'm thinking about these sorts of cases, I am thinking about arterials and more like long haul or middle mile, and not distribution fiber, like Travis was saying.
And the big guys
But even
do
on-
use empty
Yes.
conduit. They do buy empty conduit when it's available.
but
They're
not
afraid to use
always.
it.
Yeah,
No,
like, but I
what's
mean,
what's
yeah,
what's not available very many places, but
Yeah,
when it is
that's true.
available, they do buy it. Yeah. So
I just
Yeah,
want
I
to
would-
throw a wrench into the party. I just want to throw a wrench into this party today.
Appreciated. That's why you're here. Go ahead, Travis.
No, I would
good wrench.
suppose, under railroad, things that are very difficult to permit and construct. But we have an example here in the cities where there's an 18 duct a pack under a railroad. Nobody knows who owns it. The city has no idea. So, so it'd be great to use it, but we've tried for a year to find out who actually owns it, because it's been traded from company to company to company to company over the years. So
I actually picked it up on eBay, Travis.
yeah.
Call.
And apparently somebody
Yeah.
bought it for $1. Now we can't find
Well,
them.
he's got it out. He put it in his garage. So.
Blair, did you want to jump in at all?
No, I'll just say that this was an idea. We pushed this in the National Broadband Plan, and as I watched various people deal with it going down the road, I was thinking, dig once, announce it 50 times. I mean, there have been lots of different proposals and stuff, and what we see, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, the Ezra Klein critique of the ability to actually build things in America. There's a conflict between what is the economically rational thing to do, which is dig once, and the difficulties of coordination. And that cuts both ways. It would be great if everybody knew every 5 years we're going to dig up this thing, and that's when you put it in, right? We're just going to dig it up once. But then, 3 years in, oh my God, I've got to do it right now, right? So I just think there isn't a silver bullet. It requires people in good faith looking at the specifics of individual situations, desiring to do the economically rational thing, but understanding that coordinating things is always going to be a challenge.
One of the things that I've said, and I'll take a response from, I think, likely Doug first, unless someone else leans way forward. It's been 10 years, I think, since someone told me Stockholm was great, but you can't repeat it. Right? Stockholm, starting in the mid 90s, they put duct in everywhere, multi-channel duct. And the idea was, well, if you started it then, it would work, but you can't do it now. And I say, bull. If you started right now and you had a time horizon of 20 years from now of having, a significant impact, I think it would probably still be worthwhile. The stuff that we're talking about, the roll up, my read of the history of electricity is that there's always going to be companies that are trying to corner the market and raise prices and cut reliability. And there will almost always be a need over multiple years to suddenly have new options for getting new fiber in the ground. However wasteful and duplicative that might seem, that is how it's going to play out.
No one's going to disagree with you, so you're stuck.
I'm surprised because a lot of people have told me, like, no, Chris, like, it's foolish. Like we've got the fiber out there. There's multiple options. We've got wireless now,
Well, I'm going to take that point of view and, look, in the fullness of time, what we should have done back in 96 is, along with the communications, the deregulation, or I should say actually trying to move a number of networks from single purpose analog networks to multi-purpose competitive digital networks, we should have just put fiber everywhere, kind of in the backhaul, and then, the open access thing, whatever. But one of the things that we did right, I think, was in terms of spectrum auctions, doing them incredibly quickly, because we knew that if the two pre-existing cellular companies were able to get significant market share, there would never be competition, because it's really hard to take a customer away. And I'm just saying, the reality of fiber now, I'm not sure you would get that much of a bang for your buck by putting fiber everywhere. You disagree, and I understand that. I'm just saying,
I think duct, and I would say, but with the potential of labor putting fiber in at a low cost. But so Kim, I think, was 5 in 1996. But for the rest of us, I feel like
I was 6. I was 6. Just getting straight. But keep going.
Blair, if you had done this in 1996, I think it would have been a scandal. I think it would have been the great bridge to nowhere. I think you would have been crucified for it, much like Verizon was 8 years later, right? Verizon did it right. They made the right investments. We got killed for it.
No, it always cracks me up. And I saw another example of this today, where we get criticized for not doing the thing that 15 years later, it would have been really nice to do that. Everyone would have said we're nuts, right? The average... We were criticized for not being visionary enough for rural America, because we only had, download speeds of 4. Well, that was the average then, and that's what the law required in terms of universal service. The average download speed now is 200 and something, right? Well, and there's a lot of interesting reasons why that's true, and how Google Fiber successfully forced Wall Street to reconsider the failure of Verizon Fios. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I'll just say it's very easy 15 years later to say, you guys should have seen everything that was going to happen, even though you didn't see it at the time.
The people who saw it were called kooks. There were people who saw it.
Michael Riley,
now let's not forget, the FCC tried to completely deregulate and make it on a per basis for empty conduit at the telcos, and miraculously they had none left.
Yeah,
they actually had a ton of it, but miraculously they couldn't find any. So that just simply died on the vine. So they did actually try to do this. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mike O'Reilly, I think in 2015, as a commissioner of the FCC, basically said broadband's still a luxury.
I thought Travis unmuted himself, so I'll mute myself. Go ahead, Trav.
No, actually, there's some municipalities we've worked in that actually prohibit you from putting extra conduit in. They call it prospecting. So just so you're aware. Yeah.
Can we get a list of them? I'd like to shame them.
Yeah. No, and that's pretty universal. They don't want you putting extra. They think you're going to take up more of the right of way. Is what.
Well, I've also seen that where telcos come into new HOAs, put the conduit in, and never fill it with fiber. And then those new HOAs are even more screwed because they're a new house, which should be a green field, and then they have no conduit in and start searching for connectivity.
Yeah, what's actually more useful to us is the cities that have the mandate that new construction has to put conduit from the D-mark to the street, that are open access and use. That is far more valuable than anything else that happens.
I just want to note that I could find people that would come on and make a case for nationalizing all the conduit, all the fiber, and everything else. We've not done that. So for people who feel like I am too radical, I do not think it's a good idea. And we could entertain it, but I don't think it's that likely to be on the.
That would be our kook episode. We should do it.
Yeah, we can't even map where broadband is at homes. I want you to, you go ahead and try to map the conduit in this country.
Yeah,
I think it's a defensible idea, but in practice, I'm not interested in moving that direction, because I think it's just a recipe for lawyers to enrich themselves. No offense to present company.
Well, during the first Trump administration, there was a serious proposal to essentially have the federal government build out a wholesale 5G network, and then all the companies would utilize that. I didn't know whether it was a joke or not when I started reading about it, but apparently it was a serious proposal, and there was some economic logic to it, which is the kind of thing that you're talking about. If you're doing a brand new thing, why do we have 3 redundant 5G networks? I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that's a legitimate question, but it was fairly quickly killed within the White House.
Yeah, I think there's a more than 2% chance that we nationalize Starlink in the next few years. I think there's a variety of ways in which we get there. I don't think it's likely, but I think that there are pathways in which we end up there. Let's bring it to a close. I think it's been we've unearthed new territory, had good discussions. So, any closing comments?
I can't say anything. I'm still kind of stunned by nationalizing Starlink.
Yeah.
I would say number one, I think it's SpaceX that has the bigger monopoly, which is to say the launch capacity is perhaps more important, because I do think there'll be other LEO competitors. I would just say, look, this year will be, perhaps the most consequential year of telecom media policy that we've had maybe since 1996. There are lots of issues we haven't talked about that are going on at the FCC, but certainly in terms of BEAD and in terms of universal service reform, in terms of copper retirement, in terms of certain kinds of transactions. Plus, you're going to see broadcast consolidation and broadcasters moving to a new standard, which allows them to essentially compete with wireless guys. This is going to be a consequential year. Whether it's a good year, that's a different question. And we'll see what happens next week with tariffs. But DC and the FCC and NTIA, what they do in the next year or two, we're going to be discussing 10 years from now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
On Connect This, still in 10 years? Just thanks, Blair. Just
episode what, 1350 or something? What is that? It's going to be
something like that. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I've got to give a shout out.
We're going to go to an every other day 15 to 20 minute format when I take over all y'all lives.
But while they're doing drilling behind me, I want to give a shout out to Ruben and his amazing comments today. That's all I have to say.
Yes.
Coming in strong today, Ruben. Coming in strong.
Yeah.
So 1,500 episodes. I would have won 300 chicken wing bets by then. Okay. Keep the tally going.
And you would have collected none of them.
Zero. Yeah.
And much like Captain America, I would just say I could do this all day. I'll make bets I don't intend to deliver all day long.
Yep.
Thank you all. It's been a fun show. Thank you, Rye, for producing. I think it's probably going to be 3 weeks till we come back. I've got a hectic schedule coming up. We'll see what's happening, but we'll be aiming for a Friday in the future to be back in front of you all. And thank you for tuning in. It's been another fun episode of Connect This.